In television history, few moments have been as incendiary and polarizing as Sinead O'Connor's performance on SNL. The night was October 3rd, 1992. As the musical guest for the evening, O'Connor took to the stage with a plan she had kept to herself, shattering expectations and igniting controversy in a matter of seconds. For her second performance of the night, she opted for an a cappella rendition of Bob Marley's War. In the middle of her performance, O'Connor held up a picture. Staring directly into the camera, she uttered the now infamous words,
"Fight the real enemy,"
and tore the image to shreds. That image, a picture of Pope John Paul II. To understand the depths of O'Connor's conviction that propelled her to such a provocative act, one must understand the crucible of her personal experiences. Sinead O'Connor was born in 1966 in Dublin, Ireland. She found her way into the music scene by the late 1980s and was a bona fide artist by the early 1990s. Her journey through fame was deeply intertwined with her upbringing in a predominantly Catholic environment, which shaped her relationship with the Catholic Church as a whole. O'Connor's childhood was steeped in the teachings and traditions of Irish Catholicism, offering her a sense of community and spirituality. However, it was also marked by instances of chastisement and abuse. Reflecting on her early years, O'Connor expressed a sincere connection to her Catholic upbringing, stating, "I was raised in a very devout Catholic family. I was very much so a believer." However, beneath this surface of devotion lay a growing disillusionment with the institution itself, as she, like many others, grappled with the realities of its shortcomings. This disillusionment was compounded by O'Connor's personal experiences of trauma and abuse, which cast a shadow over her faith and ultimately fueled her activism. As O'Connor painfully recounted in her book, she endured horrific abuse at the hands of her own mother. Her mother's abuse took a devastating toll on O'Connor's mental and emotional well-being, leaving scars that persisted long into adulthood. In the aftermath of her parents' separation, O'Connor's father sent her away. O'Connor's father was at a loss. He sought refuge for her in a Magdalene laundry away from the turmoil of her family life. Of the time, O'Connor said, "My worried dad thought he was doing the right thing by sending me to be rehabilitated. He told me he even paid for the privilege of doing so. He thought he was doing the right thing. He was convinced into it. I never told him the truth of how bad it was." The Magdalene laundries were a network of institutions run primarily by the Catholic Church across Ireland, the United Kingdom, Australia, and other countries. They were established in the 18th century and operated well into the 20th century, with the last one closing in 1996. Initially, they were intended to serve as refuges for fallen women, including sex workers, unmarried mothers, and those deemed morally or socially wayward. The mission purportedly was to provide these women with a chance at redemption through prayer, penance, and hard work, primarily in laundry services, which earned them the name Magdalene Laundries. However, over time, the Magdalene laundries became notorious for their harsh and exploitative conditions. Many women and girls, including those who were not fallen but were perceived as such due to circumstances such as poverty or pregnancy out of wedlock, were admitted against their will or under coercion. Sinead vividly captured the anguish within, recounting, "We were girls in there, not women, just children really, and the girls in there cried every day. Once inside, they were subjected to grueling labor, physical and emotional abuse, neglect, and deprivation of basic rights." Sinead later reflected, "It was a prison. We didn't see our families. We were locked in, cut off from life, deprived of a normal childhood." The women were often stripped of their identities, referred to only by numbers or false names, and isolated from the outside world. Describing the variety of tenants, O'Connor lamented, "We were told we were there because we were bad people. Some of the girls had been assaulted at home and not believed. One girl was in because she had a bad hip and her family didn't know what to do with her. It was of great grief to us. escape was difficult due to strict supervision and the fear of reprisals. The failures of the Magdalene laundries were manifold. They failed to uphold their stated mission of rehabilitation and redemption, instead perpetuating cycles of abuse and suffering for vulnerable women. O'Connor later said of the experience, "There was no rehabilitation there and no therapy. Nothing but people telling us we were terrible people. I stopped the stealing all right. I didn't want to be sent back there." The institutions operated with little oversight or regulation, allowing systemic abuses to persist for decades. O'Connor would proceed to carve out her own path, moving beyond her pain and channeling it into her music. Her music served as a refuge, resonating swiftly with audiences. Drawing from her personal struggles and unwavering belief, she emerged as a daring and unyielding presence in the music world. By then, the Catholic Church had weathered a string of controversies that tarnished its reputation and integrity, yet it somehow continued to evade significant public scrutiny. Foremost among those were revelations of widespread abuse by clergy members spanning multiple countries and leaving a trail of victims across the world. Compounding the issue were allegations surfacing of systemic cover-ups by church officials who prioritized protecting the institution's reputation over the well-being of survivors. O'Connor felt a deep sense of betrayal and anger towards the church and its leadership. This brings us back to that pivotal moment at 30 Rock. Following Sinead O'Connor's performance on Saturday Night Live, the reaction was swift and intense. O'Connor's decision to tear up a picture of Pope John Paul II sparked immediate controversy, with viewers and media outlets alike weighing in on the provocative act. The public's reaction was mixed. The cast and crew of Saturday Night Live were reportedly taken aback by the unexpected turn of events. Surprisingly, one of the most notable critics of O'Connor's performance was next week's musical guest Madonna, who had herself previously staged controversial performances involving Catholic imagery. In an interview with Vanity Fair, Madonna expressed her disapproval. "I found Sinead O'Connor's actions horrifying and inexcusable. There are better ways to make a statement without resorting to shock tactics." In the days and weeks that followed, the fallout from O'Connor's performance continued to reverberate. Her album, I Do Not Want What I Haven't Got, which had reached #1 on the charts just weeks before the SNL appearance, experienced a surge in sales initially, but subsequently faced backlash. Some radio stations refused to play her music, and her career suffered a setback as a result of the controversy. Despite this, O'Connor continued to release music and tour, but she never reached the same level of commercial success as she had with her breakout album. In a 2021 New York Times interview, O'Connor revisited her protest against the Catholic Church, expressing unwavering resolve despite facing considerable backlash. She affirmed, "I'm not sorry I did it. It was brilliant, but it was very traumatizing. It was open season on treating me like a crazy bitch." In her memoir Rememberings, O'Connor delved into the repercussions of her actions, suggesting that despite external appearances, they brought her personal clarity. She reflected, "I feel that having a #1 record derailed my career, and my tearing the photo put me back on the right track." As the decade progressed, mounting pressure forced the Catholic Church to address internal issues and regain public trust. Calls for transparency, accountability, and survivor protection grew louder both internally and externally. O'Connor, in a 2000 interview with The Independent, passionately condemned the Pope, declaring, "I believe that the Pope epitomizes all that is evil." Following the scandals of the church, scandals surrounding the Magdalene laundries began to emerge as well, fueled by testimonies from survivors, investigative journalism, and government inquiries. These revelations shed light on the extent of the abuses and sparked public outrage and demands for accountability. Then, in 2013, the Irish government issued a formal apology to the survivors and established a compensation scheme, acknowledging the state's role in referring women and girls to the laundries and its failure to protect their human rights. O'Connor would later say, "They said something like, 'We're sorry for the hurt.' The word hurt doesn't even cover it. I am disgusted that the state won't apologize. I am disgusted at the tone of the church's flaccid apology. Despite the turmoil following her SNL performance, O'Connor remained committed to her activism in music. She continued to push boundaries with albums like Universal Mother and Faith and Courage in the 1990s and early 2000s. However, her struggles with mental health and public scrutiny often overshadowed her musical accomplishments. Surprisingly, she announced her retirement from music in 1999, only to make a swift return. O'Connor's vocal advocacy for social justice, particularly for women's and LGBTQ+ rights, solidified her reputation as a courageous artist. As she approached the end of her life, O'Connor faced profound emotional battles. The renowned Irish singer-songwriter passed away at 56, leaving behind a legacy that emphasized the importance of unwavering convictions for public figures and the depth of conviction a pop star can embody.